Okay, we're on Ayin Dalid Amid Aleph Hashatei Avidas Kshereva. It's I don't know about 8 and 9 lines into the page. So the Gemara had brought a brisa. The sheet of Rav Shimon. It's like this: Mincha of Kehanim are not eaten. Usually, we understand that they're entirely burnt. Rav Shimon in the Mishnah was machadish that you actually do this funny thing where you do the kmitza and burn the kmitza and then you burn the rest. Okay, where does he get it from? Because there's a pasuk. The pasuk says Haisa lakayin kamincha. What this pasuk means is a machlokes. We focus on Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon said that it's like the other minchas, which have a kmitza, but it's entirely burnt. Fine. But the Tanakama, and that's what we're going to focus on right now, the Tanakama darshan the pasuk differently. The Tanakama said, "V'hoisa lakayin lemincha shetei avidas ksherubay." That means that the koyin is able to do the service of his own sin mincha, meaning, according to Tanakama, again, not Rav Shimon, according to Tanakama, this pasuk means is that the koyin shows up to the Beis HaMikdash, he has a sin offering mincha, he gets to do it if he chooses to. We don't say that it's your mincha, you can't like a doctor can't treat himself. No, you could do it yourself. Okay. Says the Gemara, is this the source that a koyin is able to do his own karbanis? Mehasam nafka. Isn't it from a different source? How do I know that a koyin is able to do his own avodah? Meaning, even if it's not your shift, if you show up, if a koyin shows up with his own carbon, how do I know that he's able to do his own carbon? Whenever he wants, he could serve. Meaning, so you have two psukim telling you the same thing, that a koyin could do his own avodah. We had a pasuk yesterday telling us that he could do his own carbon mincha sin offering, but the pasuk says he could always do his own carbana. So why do I need both psukim for? So says the Gemara, the first pasuk tells me that he could do his own karbanos. Maybe that's only referring to an optional nidava. But if it's a sin offering, maybe he needs someone else to do it. Maybe part of the kapara process is to get other kehanim involved. Kamash malano. This pasuk is telling me that he's able to do even his own sin offering. Okay. We're talking about a sin offering of a mincha. But the point is, it would apply to chatas as well. It says the Gemara, Hanami mehacha nafka. Wait, there's another source that he could do his own chatas. It says, Mehasam nafka, v'chiper hakayin al nefesh hashegeges b'chata b'shkaga, that he atones for the sinner's mistake. Melamed shakayin mischapri adeyatzmai, that a kohen could bring his own chatas. So what do I need two psukim for telling me that he could bring his own sin offering? So says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. The answer is, one pasuk is to tell me that he brings a sin offering when it's a shoygig, but I need another pasuk to tell me that he could do his own avodah when the sin offering is done b'mezid. Now, when is there a sin offering for mezid? Usually sin offering is only shoygig. So there's one case, and that's a chatas oil v'yard. That's a punishment based on if you can't afford, right? Like if you could afford an animal, great. If not birds, then bread. There's one situation where you bring it when it's done b'mezid, and that's shvuas ha'edus, that if you swear falsely under oath, every case of false oath is mezid. It's not like I didn't realize. No, you know what you're doing, and there's a chatas for that. So the one pasuk tells me that he could bring his own chatas, is talking about b'shoygig. This pasuk's telling me that he could do it even b'mezid, that even if he does it b'mezid, and it's the type of sin offering that requires a chatas b'mezid, which is that case specifically, he could also bring his own atonement. B'mezid heichim ashkechasla, and what's the case? B'zadon shvua, the case of deliberately lying under oath, which is b'mezid, and it requires a chatas, and if he can't afford an animal, he brings a bird or a bread offering, and the chiddush is that in such a situation, he could do the avodah of his own carbon. Okay. Till now, we've had two possibilities of what does a kohen do with his sin offering mincha. Again, this is one point that you should realize. Every day, the kohen gadol will bring what's called the chavitin. The chavitin in the Torah was very clear. You burn the whole thing. That's very clear. When a kohen brings an optional carbon mincha, he also burns the whole thing. The question is when it's a sin offering mincha. Tanakama says burn the whole thing, keep it consistent. Comes Rav Shimon, he says no, you do the kmitza, burn the kmitza, then you burn the rest. Now there's a third shita, and that's Rav Shimon bar Yochai's son. Rav Shimon bar Yochai's son does not fully agree with his father. He says the following. Tanya, Idach, Rav Shimon Omer, Shimon says, Minchas Chayte Shel Kohanim. If it's a sin offering of a kohen, nikmetzes, he does the kmitza. V'akaimitz kar b'fnei atzmai v'shirayin krev b'fnei atzmai. You burn the kaimitz and you burn the remainder. That we've had so far. Comes Rav Elazar bar Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon bar Yochai's son says, I don't agree with my father fully. I believe it's like this. Rav Elazar bar Shimon Omer, hakoyim karv ba'atzmai, you burn the kmitza, v'hashirayim mispazrim al beis hadeshin, and the remainder is put on the beis hadeshin. Now the beis hadeshin Pashtus is referring to, according to Rashi, this is referring to it was a heap of ash outside of Yerushalayim where they would bring the excess ash. It was basically a holy garbage. So that's what you do with the rest. So you burn the kmitza, and then the rest you don't eat, you don't burn, you put it in the holy garbage outside of Yerushalayim. Okay, that's a Elazar bar Shimon shita. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Chi bar Abba, Havi bar Rav Yechon. Rav Chi bar Abba says, Rav Yechon says, I don't understand this shita. Beis hadeshin teicha. Where is this beis hadeshin? Now there are two. You could call a beis hadeshin of a couple places. You could argue the top of the mizbeach is a beis hadeshin because there's a lot of ash there. But if he means to put it on the top of the mizbeach, then he's agreeing with his father. His father's shita is you burn the kmitza, you burn the remainder on top of the mizbeach. He says no, you don't burn the remainder. You put the remainder on the beis hadeshin. Well, if the beis hadeshin is a euphemism for the mizbeach, he's agreeing with his father. It must be the beis hadeshin is the holy garbage, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm saying it's the place where they would dispose of the ash outside of Yerushalayim. So that's what he means. So says the Gemara, where do we find that you're supposed to lichachila bring something there? Every carbon is either eaten or burnt on the mizbeach. Now you're telling me that you lichachila bring the rest of the carbon outside of Yerushalayim? Where do we do this? Says the Gemara, Amarli Rav Abba, Dilma li'ibud. Rav Abba says, maybe you're supposed to dispose of it. Meaning, it's not that that's the avoida. Right? The avoida is to burn it on the mizbeach. The avoida is you burn the kmitza, and the remainder is supposed to be disposed. And that's how you dispose of it. Okay. Says the Gemara, Achuchi aleha. They laughed at it. They said, V'chi yeshel davar karav li'ibud. Where do we find a carbon is lichachila thrown away? Every time you dispose of a carbon, it's where something went wrong. It became tameh, it expired in time. Now you're telling me lichachila. You go to the rabbi and you say, what do I do with a kayin sin offering? And he says, here's what you do. You burn the kmitza and the remainder you throw away. Where do we find lichachila to throw it away? Where? But that's the avodah. It's on the mizbeach. The shiraim is poured at the base of the mizbeach. At least that's the avodah. This is you're taking out of your shalayim and you're disposing of it. Lichachila. Where do we find such a thing? So that's they laughed at. So says the Gemara, Tani Avud Ravavin. Avud Ravavin Taka says there's a brisa that says that that's what you do. Meaning, I'll say it outside, we'll see it inside. You're laughing about where do we find the possibility of lichachila disposing it. And the answer is there is such a metzius. Why? It's basically like this. There's a pasuk that says, let me read you the pasuk. It'll help if I read you the pasuk. This is, the pasuk says like this. Sorry. The pasuk says, V'chol minchas kayin kalil tiyeh lo seachel. The entire carbon, kalil tiyeh, should be entirely burnt, lo seachel, do not eat it. You know what Rav Elazar Rav Shimon says? The end of the pasuk and the first pasuk are not talking about the same thing. V'chol kayin kalil tiyeh, burn the whole avodah, burn the whole thing. That's talking about the optional mincha. But the minchas chote, the sinner's mincha, is just lo seachel. You know what it means? Don't eat it. Meaning, it's this kind of glitch. What do I do with the rest of this mincha? You can't burn it because it says lo seachel. It doesn't say kalil tiyeh. Kalil tiyeh means burn it. It doesn't say kalil tiyeh on this. Kalil tiyeh is talking about an optional mincha. An obligatory mincha, there's no obligation to burn. So you say, well, if I can't burn it, I should probably eat it. Lo seachel. So lo seachel, there's an isser of achila, but there's no mitzvah of burning. So you know what? What do you do if you can't eat it, you can't burn it? You got to throw it away. So you said, where do we find such a thing? The answer is, this is the exception. And why did Rav Elazar Rav Shimon come to this conclusion? Because he believes at the end of the pasuk that says lo seachel is talking about this, but there's no obligation to burn it. Kalil tiyeh is talking about an optional mincha. You burn the optional mincha. This mincha you don't burn. So you say, well, eat it, lo seachel. So if I can't eat it and I can't burn it, I got to dispose of it. Says the Gemara, "V'chol minchas kayin kalil tiyeh lo seachel la'achila sheftiv v'lo l'davar acher." It's only lo seachel and not something else. And this means what I just told you. The Gemara says, Maika Amar, how do you read it in the Brisa? This is how you're supposed to read it. Amar Abaya. Abaya, for some reason, reverses the pasuk. He says, Kol minchas kayin lo seachel, that the sinner's mincha don't eat, and kalil tiyeh nitvasai. And when do you burn it? By an optional mincha, obligatory mincha. You don't eat and you don't burn. If you don't eat, you don't burn it. You got to throw it away. Now Abaya did it very well. The thing is that he reversed the order of the pasuk. He for some reason said kol koyin loise echel kol tia. He sort of took kol tia, put it at the end of the pasuk. So says the Gemara, Amalei Rava. Rava said sakina charifa mifsek ikrai. You took a sharp knife to cut the pasuk apart. Well, why'd you do this? You could do it just simply straight. Rava agrees with Abaya. He just doesn't like how he did the drasha. This is how you're supposed to read it. Lama Rava kol minchas koyin kol tia. When the pasuk says there's an obligation to burn the mincha, that's nidvaso. That's an optional mincha. Meaning, the Torah says to burn the daily chavitin of the kohen gadol. That we know. Then the pasuk says burn this. That's the optional mincha of the kohen burn. Loisei ochel is chovasai, and you're not supposed to eat the sinner's mincha. Meaning, so the sinner's mincha, there's no obligation to burn, but there's an isser achila. You can't eat it, can't burn it. You got to throw it away. Now, the pasuk does say there's a chiv of burning of mincha, and we said that's the optional mincha. So just very quickly, the daily chavitin of the kohen gadol is burnt. There's no shayla. You have over here though, you got right and left side. You got the optional mincha and the sinner's mincha. One has a mitzvah to burn, one does not. So we said, well, burn the daily kohen gadol and you burn the optional mincha. You don't burn the kohen gadol's sin offering. The Gemara says maybe reverse it. Maybe you should burn the sin offering and not the optional mincha. I mean, again, the daily kohen gadol's chavitin is burnt. One of them is also burnt. An optional mincha of a kohen or a sinner's mincha of a kohen. You say, burn the optional mincha, not the sinner's mincha. The sinner's mincha, throw away. Maybe reverse it. Says the Gemara, Epachana. Gemara says, no. Mistaber nidvasa havle rebuya. It makes more sense to compare the optional mincha to the kohen gadol's mincha. The kohen gadol's mincha is burnt, so it's the optional mincha is burnt. And why does it make more sense to compare the two? Because shekein tadira. The kohen gadol's mincha is daily. The optional mincha of a kohen was probably very routinely. How often did they bring a sin offering mincha? Not as much. So it makes more sense to compare the chavitin, the kohen gadol, daily to the optional mincha. They're both burnt. And also, loichate, both are not coming for sins. The daily chavitin of the kohen gadol was not a sin offering. And this is also makes more sense to compare it to the nidava. And basis reicha, they both have a great aroma. They're both not coming for sin. So they're both reich nichayach. Adarabba, the Gemara says, no, I could argue on the contrary. Compare the chavitin to the sin offering and say both the sin offering and the chavitin are burnt and not the optional mincha. Chayvas avle rebuya, why? Sheken isaron. Both the chavitin and the sin offering are both an isaron, a flour, and chova, they're both obligatory. So you have 3 reasons to compare it to nedava, and 2 reasons to compare it to a sin offering. 3 beats 2. Says the Gemara, Hanach Nefishin. Okay, very good. The Gemara now says one last point, and this will take us to the Mishnah. What do the Rabbanon do with v'chol koyin kolul tia lo seachal? Again, according to the Rabbanon, everything is burnt. Chavitin koyin gadol, optional mincha b'koyin, sin offering of mincha b'koyin, it's all burnt. Burn. Rav Elazar bar Rav Shimon was the one who started dissecting the pasuk. No, there's a sin offering is isser achila. An optional mincha is an isser is a chiv of burning. The Rabbanon just say it's all the same. So what do they do with this pasuk? They don't rip the pasuk apart. So what do they do with the pasuk? So the Gemara says, I'll just say it outside, we'll see it inside. While everything is burnt according to the Rabbanan, they're all treated the same. Technically, the chavitin of the kohen gadol, the pasuk just says to burn, it never says don't eat it. And the optional mincha, it says don't eat it, but it never says to burn it. The Rabbanan use this pasuk to sort of just connect the two. So half of the halacha is said by the chavitin, half of the halacha is said by the optional mincha. By the chavitin it says burn, but it never says issa d'oraisa v'achila. By the optional mincha it says issa d'oraisa v'achila, it never says to burn. The answer is you put it together, this pasuk just basically says they're all the same. There's an issa achila of all of it, there's a chiv burning of all of it, it's all the same. It says the Gemara, by the chavitin all it says is the obligation to burn it, but it never says the isser of eating. And by the optional mincha, it says the isser of achila, but doesn't say the chiv to burn it. Go to the next. How do I know the halachas apply to each other? Meaning, both have an isser achila, both have a chiv of burning. Tamalemer kalil exer shava. The extra of this pasuk has the extra word kalil for exer shava. Nemer kan kalil, v'nemer lalon kalil. By the chavitin it says kalil. By the optional mincha it says kalil. Malalon b'kol tikta, avkan b'kol tikta. Just like the chavitin you have to burn, so the optional mincha you have to burn. Umakan litin lo sasei al chilaso, af litin lo sisein al chilaso. So there's an lo sasei on both. So by the way, you see from here though, that anytime there's a chiyuv to burn something, there's now an isser of achila as well. That's by the mincha. The Gemara has the following question. By Ravina, koyin she'achol min emurim mahu. What if a koyin eats the emurim? So he takes the kidneys that are supposed to be burnt on the mizbeach by the chatas and he eats it. So now, how many lashes does he get? Now, he definitely gets lashes for a zar. What's a zar? We always think of a zar as a Yisrael. A zar is not a Yisrael. A zar is an outsider. I'm a zar for 99% of the avod in the Beis Hamikdash because a Yisrael is an outsider for almost everything. But a kohen eating the parts that are meant to be burnt in the mizbech is also an outsider because it's meant for God. And by him eating it, he's also an outsider. So he's definitely going to get lashes for that. He is for this discussion. He's a zar for this discussion because he shouldn't be eating the emurim. The question is there now a new issa? You just told me that anything at time something is supposed to be burnt, there's now an issa doraisa of lo seachel. So that emurim is supposed to be burnt. So that means that maybe there's an additional lo seachel, and that means an additional set of lashes. Says the Gemara, lav de zaros, go to the next page, lo kami boile. Obviously, the issa doraisa of zaros is no shaila that you're going to get. Ki kami boile, lav de kolul tmai. The question is whether there's an issa doraisa of lo seachel. So Rav Aaron, interesting. You don't see the name Aaron very often, and you don't see Moshe ever. Aaron once. Rav Aaron, Rav Aaron said to Ravina, there is an issa deraisa of lo yisayachel. Tashim ad Tanya Rav Elazar Omer, kol shu b'kol tia litin lo yisayachel. Any time something is meant to be burnt and you eat it, you over an issa deraisa of lo yisayachel. So that would be an added set of lashes for the kohen. Let's go from this Mishnah to the next. We'll stop at the next Mishnah because the truth is it's a cheshbon. And we don't have tables. So the Mishnah says like this. The Mishnah says, Minchas Kayhanim. Again, the Mincha of Kayhanim is entirely burnt. Minchas Kayhanim, Minchas Kayin Mashiach, the daily Chavitin, Minchas Nesachim, and the Mincha that is associated with the Taida, with the Tamid, the daily Tamid. All these three karbanos is Lamizbeach. They're entirely burnt. Ve'ein lahem lekohanim, and the Kohanim don't get anything. And the Mishnah just says like a riddle. This is the one time where the Mizbeach gets way more than the Kehanim. Meaning these are the examples where it goes entirely for Mizbeach and zero goes to the Kehanim. Now, by the way, there's an obvious question, which is, isn't every oila like that? Isn't the oila entirely burnt and nothing goes to the Kehanim? And the answer is, that's not true. The Kehanim get the hide. These are the three karbanos where the Kehanim get zilch. It's entirely burnt, and that's by the minchas. It's entirely burnt on the mizbeach, and there's no other carbon like that where the kahanim get nothing. Even the oila, the kahanim get the hide of the animal. Then the Mishnah says, but there are karbanos that are entirely for the kahanim, and the mizbeach gets nothing. The opposite. Shtei halechem, the shtei halechem on shvuas, v'lechem aponim, nechal mekahanim ein behem mizbeach. These are entirely given to the kahanim, and the mizbeach gets nothing. And this is the one case where the Kehanim get everything and the Mizbeach gets nothing. So we've created a riddle. We've said there are situations where the Mizbeach gets everything, Kehanim get nothing, and vice versa. So let's analyze the first part. What are the three times where the Mizbeach gets everything, the Kehanim get zero? And that's mincha, mincha, mincha. Says the Gemara, what about the average oila? As I told you, every oila, the Mizbeach gets entirely burnt. The answer is, ika oira l'kehanim. Every oila, at least the Kehanim get the hide. Says the Gemara, okay, ha'ika oilas ha'oif. The oilas ha'oif, the Kehanim get nothing. It's entirely burnt on the Mizbeach. So says the Gemara, no, I'll tell you why, it's not entirely burnt. If you go through the Psukim, as last week's parasha, they take off the crop and the gizzards, and that's thrown in the trash, and the rest is burnt. So the Kehanim get nothing, but the Mizbeach doesn't get everything. These minchas are the one time where the Mizbeach gets everything and the Kehanim get nothing. You're right, the Kehanim don't get the oil sa'oif, but the Mizbeach doesn't get everything because the crop and the gizzards are removed. No. This is the mincha of the Kehanim, minchas of the Kehanim, the daily chavitin of the mincha, and the mincha that comes with the karba and tamid. No, the other minchas usually are eaten by the Kehanim. So these three minchas, and it's not like oil sa'oif, because oil sa'oif, although the Kehanim get nothing, the crop and the gizzards are removed. Says the Gemara, ha'ika nesachim, what about the nesachim? The wine of the Mizbeach, every time you bring a karban, you bring wine. What happens to the wine? The Kehanim don't get that. It's on the Mizbeach. The answer is, it's not on the Mizbeach, it's in the Mizbeach. It's actually poured into the shitin, the two holes. There were two cavities that went down to the center of the universe. So the Mizbeach doesn't get it all. It's not burnt to the Mizbeach. You're right, the Kohanim don't get everything, and it's technically all poured into the Mizbeach, not on the Mizbeach. We're talking about on the Mizbeach. Says the Gemara, L'shitin Azli, that goes to the Shitin. The Gemara says, Umay Bezu, and what's the Chiddush in the Mishnah? It says that these are the 3 times. What's the Chiddush? Lafuki midish Shmuel, it's to disagree with Shmuel. Damar Shmuel, Misnadev Yayin, Meviu Mizalfe, Agavi Ishim. Kamash Malon, to L'shitin Azli. Shmuel Shita is that whenever you donate wine for the Mizbeach, it's not entirely poured in the center. He actually believes that some of it is sprayed on the fire. A little bit sprayed on the fire, and the rest are poured. The Chiddush of the Mishnah is no. Because we said before, what about the wine? And we said, no, the wine doesn't go on the Mizbeach, it goes in the Mizbeach. Not according to Shmuel. According to Shmuel, Taka goes on the Mizbeach as well. And our Mishnah is not like Shmuel. Just to finish up, Misayela the Shmuel, but then the Mishnah said, Damar Shmuel, Misnadev Shemen, Koimtzai B'shir of Necholim. One point is like Shmuel, because the Mishnah does not mention oil. Why not mention oil as being entirely on the Mizbeach? If I donate oil, don't they burn it entirely on the Mizbeach? The answer is no. According to Shmuel, only a koimitz is burnt on the Mizbeach, and the remainder are eaten by the Kehanim. So according to Shmuel, the reason why it doesn't belong in the list is because it's not entirely burnt on the Mizbeach. Only a spoonful is poured on the handful is poured on the Mizbeach. The rest are given to the Kehanim. Then the Mishnah said, what are the two times where the Kehanim get everything, the Mizbeach gets nothing? Shtei alechem, lechem apanim. Says the Gemara, V'su leka, that's it, ha'ika chatasoif. Isn't every chatasoif, the entire bird is eaten by Kehanim? So that's an example of the Kehanim getting everything. The answer is, yeah, but the blood is squeezed on the Mizbeach. So the Mizbeach gets the blood. So it's not a good case. Ikadama, ayika aloig shemashal mitzayra. What about the loig of the mitzayra? Whenever the mitzayra, they would take some oil, and they would give it to the Kehanim. The Kehanim get everything. The answer is, yeah, after they put a little bit on his ear and a little bit on his toe, and a little bit on his thumb. So the Kehanim don't get everything. They only get a part of it. They get the remainder of that. It's probably the majority, 99%, but they don't get all of it. These karbanas, they get everything. Ikamat noisav. Umay bezu, and what's the chiddush in the Mishnah? Lafukim and amr shtei alechem abos mepnei and l'sreifen ozia. Kamashwan the bezu yafakaychay nikoya kehan loylam. The chiddush in the Mishnah is that the shtei alechem on Shavuos, the kehan get everything. What's the chiddush? Let's say there are no shlamim. Remember, the shtei alechem always, they're waved with the 2 shlamim, the kivsei atzeres. What if you don't have any kvasim? Rav Akiva Shita is that you bring the shtei alechem and they're entirely burnt on the Mizbeach. The Kehanim don't get them. Kamashal on the Mishnah, no. The shtei alechem always go to the Kehanim. Even if you don't have kvasim, the Kehanim get the shtei alechem as well. All right, we'll stop here. Pick it up tomorrow.